Hey, what's going on? I'm Sam, and today's band is Elegant Weapons. Elegant Weapons was formed by Richie Faulkner, the replacement guitar player for K.K. Downing of Judas Priest. And we are going to hear from Richie and the band members, especially Richie, a bit about the advice that Glenn Tipton gave him and why he really got this band together. And in this video, me and my buddy Andy are going to be talking about this album and what we think. Hey, could this be one of our top albums of the year? All right, let's rock and roll.
When I joined Priest, Glenn Tipton told me he wishes that we had 25 years left, 20 years left, and he said it's not that situation. I joined obviously on the farewell tour. Again, luckily, fortunately, we're still touring the world, putting out new music 13 years after I joined. So, but that wasn't, I don't think that was the plan when I joined, So it was a conscious, it was in my mind because of what Glenn said. This is not going to be forever. So I'm thinking, well, one day then it will, I'll start thinking about my own solo thing or putting a band together, I think it was the pandemic really that made me think, well, what about getting all these ideas that I've been putting down over the last few years? The Priest record was written, no more riffs were required for that. So why not go through these files that I've been putting, on the computer for a few years and see what we've got in there? Are there songs? Is there an EP? Is there an album in there? Could I put a band together around, all those sort of questions?
I met Richie for some years. We were playing together a couple of tours with Judas Priest and my Spanish band, Lords of Black. And suddenly I got a call from him. He was doing a band, he was recording an album, and he wanted to try a couple of singers. And he asked me to try some of the songs in the studio to see how it works. To be together in the band. So I went to the studio, I recorded a couple of songs, and we felt pretty great working together. So we move on to the next level, let's say, to record the album.
When I became involved, he was looking to demo some of the songs from this record, and the drummer Scott Travis was wrapped up with another project and was unavailable. I live half an hour from Richie, so he called me up, went to the Falcon's Nest, his home studio, and we tracked the drums there, and it had an absolute blast.
You had Davey Rimmer on the bass, and I've known Davey, I think since the early 2000s. Me and Davey have been playing in cover bands around London and England, and you're playing 4 or 5 nights a week, and you're playing Sabbath and Priest and Maiden and Ozzy and Jeff Beck and the Stones and Van Morrison, all those songs, and you get to a point you're playing them so much you hate it. You can't stand it. You're playing another Irish bar, and but that's where you hone your craft, and you hone it together with someone like that on the bass. It's almost like a symbiotic thing, So it's kind of, his bass playing is integral in a way to the way that I play guitar because he's been there for so long, So I got the gig in Priest in 2011. And Davey got the gig in Uriah Heep in 2013. So we both went, our separate ways. Obviously we're best mates. So I think I was best man at his wedding. You know what I mean? So we were still best friends. And when it came to the opportunity to pick a bass player, there was no one else. It was Davey.
All right, I am here with Andy. Andy is my buddy. He just did a review with me about a week ago or so. And he is from, as you can see on the screen, 21090. It's a YouTube channel. It is beer, bourbon, and rock and roll, whiskey. I mean, it's every Tuesday night at 9 Eastern time here on the in the United States. They go live every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, and they're talking whiskey, music, all kind of stuff, doing blinds. The other guy, we're going to talk about Andy here. Andy here, he definitely is taking to the coming on with me to talk music, and we've been sitting here and we've been having a blast just chatting music when it comes from everything. His partner Todd didn't show up. Todd is very fashionable. He is an awesome singer. He loves to sing.
You get me, Mom, Sherry. I want what you got all over me. Isn't my love strong enough?
and he's the best air drummer in the world.
Here I go again on my own.
But he's not here today because
He
he's
does all those
doing
things great, but his wife just doesn't let him come out to play. So he's home.
well, he's doing shorts for your YouTube channel. That's what he's doing right now. He's down in his basement, man, drinking whiskey.
That's
So
right.
you're never going to get him out of there. You actually got your own whiskey coming out, right?
We do. Actually, it's going to be dropping this summer. It's going to be ode to our favorite band. Yeah, Pour Some Austin on Me. We partnered with Still Austin, and it's the very first single barrel they've ever done with a whiskey influencer, which is on YouTube, which is really cool. So we're super excited about that, and happy to be back here with you, man.
Cool. So we are going to be talking about elegant weapons, and I could tell you that I was sitting out in my garage, and I had some friends coming over, but I was out in my garage, I was working, and I seen this, I put it on, I start listening to it, and I was like, man, this is, I mean, every song, and I'm like, I'm listening to the singer, and I'm going like, this is freaking heavy, and this is really good, and that is Elegant Weapons. Elegant Weapons, my buddy comes over, and I said, man, you got to check this band out. You got to. He goes, he knows. Oh yeah, I know that is. And I forgot his name right off the top of my head. That's Richie Faulkner. Richie Faulkner is the guitar player that took KK Downing's place in Judas Priest.
Yeah, there's a debut album from them. So Richie Faulkner and then Scott Travis also from Priest, and then Ronnie Romero is the lead singer. Rex Brown is the bass player from Pantera. I think Travis and Brown, it may be two different pictures. They're only on the studio album. So I guess if they do any type of touring, I think David Rimmer from Uriah Heep is going to be touring as the bass player, and Chris Williams from Accept. But I mean, dude, still notable.
They said on this, the only one that Rex Brown was on was the Horns for Halo.
Yeah,
that was on the video. They put him. That was the only song they actually, him and Judas Priest's drummer Scott Travis. I'm looking at I was looking at it because as he going through.
Yeah, they're studio only, so they would have done the video and stuff like that. But I think Brown's touring with Pantera now because he's got that reinvent of I think he's on the road, and so I don't know what Scott Travis isn't doing. But I don't know if they're touring or not. But this would be a great group to see because for whatever reason,
and we don't want to throw out. We got Christopher Williams. That's the drummer. He is from Accept.
Yep.
And so that's the guys I'm trying to, because even though I've been listening to the album for about a week, this is when I kind of took a little bit deeper dive into who was in it. Because once he told me who was the guitar player was, I still didn't know that they had Ronnie Ramone. And when I first heard it, I was like, well, is that Macaulay from MSG? Because he plays in MSG now, and he was in Rainbow. He's all over the place. Like I was talking to you earlier, like, this Ronnie Romero, he's everywhere. He's got a pretty amazing voice, especially on this album.
Fantastic pipes, man. I mean, I think if you were going to find somebody to replace Ronnie James Dio, I mean, he's got the ability to mimic that voice to a T. But yeah, we were spitballing about this earlier about how he can sound like different, frontmen throughout this album. And I think he's got the perfect voice to carry with you got a group of metal all-stars here, right? So when you're mixing Pantera and Judas Priest together and saying we need a singer who's got a big voice that's versatile and can work with it. And I think Ronnie Romero fits this bill great. So, and he's young. He's younger than these guys too, man. He's 41 years old. The rest of these guys are much older than that. They probably got him by 20 years. So it's cool to see him just kind of jumping in, like supercharged. And like, this is a, I'm not going to give it away, but it's a great album.
It's, right now, I'll tell you my top album, because I'm biased, is Metal Church is right now my top album. This is right now. This one is really close because I mean almost every song on here is just rocks out, and it's heavy because I mean you got Judas Priest's guitar and guitar player. Even though it's sad that he if you listen to new KK Downing too, if you got it, he's got a new album out. He's got Ripper Owens singing for him, so you definitely got to check it out. Because I was listening to his new stuff coming out. That's pretty damn. I mean, KK's still ripping it too, but he takes a place and he's in Judas Priest. So, I mean, it's heavy guitar. I mean, really good heavy. The leads are extravagant, but he said Richie describes us as a mix of like Jimi Hendrix, Priest, Sabbath, solo Ozzy, and Black Label Society. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what he said they wanted to mix, but I kind of put this in parentheses. He said, but they went through a Marshall Plexi. That's kind of maybe your thing with music instruments and stuff. Um, the speakers, I guess, or the sound, whatever it was. He was. Let me put this. So the whole thing, they wanted to make it sound up to date. Was to actually down tuned a whole what do you say, a whole step. So they down tuned everything, and then they put it through a Marshall Plexi. Basically, does one thing, but it does one thing. It does one thing. It does it very well. But again, down tuning creates more of a modern sound, and by using the classic sound of the Marshall Plexi melody, it's still going to shake your bones. That's kind of what he said. So that's what they mixed. That's kind of how they were explaining how they tuned down and did all this to kind of make it modern, but still give you that Ozzy Dio sound.
I think it's cool. I didn't realize just what a versatile guitar player I think Richie Faulkner was too because there's a lot of when you said Hendrix, like there's a lot of soul and blues and stuff that you hear in this too. It's not just straight ahead like face melter stuff that you're going to get with your Priest album. Same with Rex Brown from Pantera. Like I didn't realize he had a solo album where he actually was a vocalist. So you've got good backing vocals there too of people who can actually sing because there's really good harmonies on this too. So you have these fused elements of heavy metal with like 80s rock kind of coming together here because Romero's got a voice that could land anywhere, or even in early 90s like grunge style. Like you hear Alice in Chains over time quite a bit throughout here, and of course I think Travis is a fantastic drummer. Like I mean they actually sound like a band that likes playing together. Like I would love it if they toured if we could see them. The problem today is that there's so many bands that are new and coming out and stuff like that, and nothing gets played. It's hard to find them. So when you text me like, Andy, you got to check this out, I gave it a spin. I was like, who is this? This is great. And man, I'm with you. I've listened to a lot of stuff this year. We're compiling our list of the best of 2023. If this isn't on there, there's a lot of stuff that's not released yet coming out because this is a dynamite album.
Yeah, because I was going to bring that up to you. So the song track 3 is "Blind Leading the Blind," and
I love that song.
But when I was listening to this reminded me of my favorite album my favorite pick from last year, and one of your top 10 picks that you and Todd picked, and that was Crash Dive, because not only did it have the heaviness to it, it had that sleazy kind of 80s rock to it. And I'm listening to it, I said, man, it kind of, if you go back and listen to that Crash Diet album, Crash Diet, you got to check them out. They are a sleaze band. They're like an 80s hair band, but the album they put out was fantastic. And this one here really resembles that in a way.
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, he was like, just a blind lady in the blind. In the back, you hear that falsetto backing vocal too. And I don't know if that's Brown or who that is, like backing up Ronnie Romero, but it's got this great hook that is, reminiscent of like a throwback sleaze style, but it's still that in-your-face rock tune, which I like. That's a great track. Even when they slow it down, like I know that I laugh when I do you read the column Blabbermouth every now and then when it comes out? It's a rock site online.
Yeah, Blabbermouth.
Yeah. I always scroll the comments because there's a bunch of trolls who probably still live with their mom in the basement, and all they do is they just get on everybody. So they did a review on Elegant Weapons, and people are just blasting Ronnie Romero. It's like his voice is too produced and over the top, and I'm like, you guys are nuts. This guy's got killer chops, and so like when they slowed it down, Ghost of You is a ballad that they did on here.
That is Great White all the way, buddy.
Yeah, doesn't it? It's got like
that's Great White. I got it written down. That's great. I'm sitting here, man. That sounds like that reminds me of like Great White.
I feel like
jazzy sound.
Yeah, Great White, because you got that soulful blue. I feel like this could, and the his voice is almost like Richie Sambora, like on the soul album. Like you could feel like this like very heartfelt blues entwined to it as well. I mean, it's cool. It shows the versatility. Like you would not expect anytime you hear Pantera and Priest, you're not expecting a ballad to come in. It's great, and it's just again shows that this album, even when they do something different outside the box, I mean, it's really really cool. I loved it.
Yeah, they threw in Lights Out. They did a cover. That was when it first came on. I was like, man, this guy did good. And then once I was singing, I was like, oh, it's Lights Out. They redid the cover.
And didn't it feel Ozzy-ish? That it had very. That's where I felt. That's where I heard Black Label Society, like Zakk Wylde type guitar. Some odd, like That's where I could hear that. I thought that was really, really cool. A couple other ones that I just absolutely loved, like Horns for a Halo, which is the name of the actual album.
Yeah.
If you listen to opening riff, does it not sound, before you get into it, sounds very Alice in Chains in like the verse of the chorus. That guitar riff sounds like Dirty Black Summer from Danzig. Listen to it again, and you can almost hear like Dirty Black Summer. Like you can almost hear that it's a really cool guitar riff that Faulkner throws out there. And then Dirty Pig's another one, dude. That's got to have Rex Brown's influence all over, because it sounds like Phil Anselmo's like voice, like Romero's channels like Pantera. It's got this very something off of Vulgar Display of Power feel to it, which is really cool. But then it kind of morphs into like a Ronnie James Dio chorus. This album is just chock full of like rock goodness, dude. I'm so happy that you're like, Andy, check this out, because man, I just started spinning. I was like, this is phenomenal. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I listen, because sometimes you'll hear an album and then you start listening to an album and then you get maybe 1 or 2 songs, but every song after song after song, I'm like, this is pretty good. I mean, this is really good. And don't get me wrong, people are gonna say, oh, this is overproduced and everything because of who's all in it. But sometimes since I'm kind of a thrash metal guy, back in the day, the raw sounding thrash metal was kind of the stuff that, it really brings you back. So when you hear a lot of the old Slayer and, Overkill and stuff like that, it was not overproduced whatsoever. It was one of them genres that, the raw stuff was really what, pumped you up. But if there's any young ones in here watching this, let me tell you what, if you wanted, you don't have this right now. If you wanted music, we used to go in the back of the hip parader and use to trade. Usually actually go and ask people would say, hey, I got this. And you would trade music through cassettes. You would people would send them music from California through the mail to give you a cassette that you had no idea what it was going to sound like. It was horrible. It was raw, but I mean, that was the way we transfer music. That's some old school stuff.
Especially if you wanted to get anything live. Like sometimes someone would catch something live and throw it. And they're like, yeah, I got this cut from, this 1998 show in Denver, Colorado. Like, oh my God. Yeah, you could find some really cool stuff. Or some bands were just trying to get their name out, like some demo tape bands, people throwing cassettes around. You can just find some cool stuff. But music was felt more authentic back then. It just, again, we're probably biased because of our age and the way we were, but it just, you had a connection to it. I'm sure kids do today too. I don't see it.
No, they don't.
It's just, actually, I take that back. The amazing thing is when you see a lot of these bands today, you see a lot of kids that come with their parents and grandparents, even because they have this connection that they're starting to formulate. I mean, my little girl, her favorite band is Def Leppard. Go figure. I didn't force her to that. She listens to it. She loves it. I know people be like, go figure. But the funny thing is, she likes Taylor Swift and all the other stuff. But man, I tell you, when like Animal comes on or Bring On the Heartbreak or Sugar or something like that, she's loving it. Like she's just, because she's like, this is really good music. It is, and so
get my daughter into it. I would torture her as a kid. I would, when she would get in there, she wanted, she would have she listen to hip hop stuff. And so whenever she was with me, I freaked in, man. I would just crank up Metallica or something. I actually played, it was not too long ago that I actually played Kill 'Em All from Metallica. And she was like, who is this? I said, this is Metallica. She goes, no. I was like, yes. And, what I mean? She said, yeah. So this is how far, they've come, a lot of these bands, over the years. But what I think is that a lot of kids, I don't think when I was younger, if you were caught with a camera, if you were caught with a recording device, if you were caught with anything in a concert back in the day, they were going to break your camera and be lucky if they didn't throw you out and lock you up for that, because, they really were, bad about that. So to me, whenever you got a chance to go to a concert to see the band, they were a little bit larger than life because you only heard them through the record. You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have everything that you got to. I think it takes away do you know the word I'm looking for? It takes away from the overall
experience of being out there too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and live is a way you almost can find out the true merit of a band sometimes too. People talk about, like you said, overproduction. I have no doubt that if you saw Elegant Weapons, these guys would bring it live. I bet you they would be fantastic live. They would be really good. And some people talk about, that raw emotion that you get. Look, I like On Through the Night from Def Leppard as much as I like Hysteria. They're two very different things. One's 18-year-old kids like new wave of British heavy metal. The other one is crazy produced by Mutt Lange. You see them live, Wasted sounds as good as Animal. Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to see a band and just see how they are live. I mean, that was one of the things. I remember the first time I saw Megadeth, it's like, God, these guys are good. Dave's like a ridiculously good rhythm guitar player. Then I remember seeing Steelheart for the first time, and people would laugh about that. I was like, this dude's voice is great. They're talented. They rock. It's like their bass player's got a mohawk, and I was like, these guys are like, they're not what you would think about from the MTV days.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a long-winded way of just like that experience of seeing someone live. It's kind of, it's missed a little bit today.
If you were going to rate this, what would you give it between 1 and 10 on this album?
I mean, I deliberated on this. There's not really many. There's some songs that are okay, and obviously some that are better than others. But there's really no fluff on this album, which I love about that. Like every song, it's not one you're going to turn off and say that song's terrible. They're all really, really good. This is an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I would put this up with the best I've heard so far in 2023, hoping that maybe if they do end up playing somewhere like a soundstage or something like that, dude, I'd go out there and see these guys. Like they were that good. I'd love to see what Romero sounds like live with Faulkner and the group back behind him. I hope they do another album, because this was great. This was a fantastic debut album.
Yeah, because I don't know. I know Judas Priest will still be Judas Priest would still be torn. I don't see them quitting.
I think they just finished their new. I think the album's done. I think Faulkner even just dropped an interview yesterday where he said that right now they're really just looking at doing the track listing, and then they got to get it pressed. And so, like early 2024, I would expect a new Priest album to come out. And of course, we'll probably tour and stuff after that. So if they do it, they got to do it now. Like they got to go out this winter and like hit with Elegant Weapons if they're going to do it. Because Priest is still the moneymaker. So that's what I'm sure that's going to drive and pay the checks.
All right, so I'm definitely with you with the 8.5 on here. This is right now. It's getting close to one of my top albums because it's close to my favorite album from last year with the Crash Dive. But these guys, I mean, I enjoy this, and I can listen. This is one of the ones that you just don't get tired of listening to, because between the vocals and the guitar and everything, just keeps going through the whole album.
It's got something for everybody. You got elements fused of 80s and metal and grunge and all. I mean, everything kind of comes together, and like you said, a little soul and kind of blues. I mean, this is a well done album. I'm glad you texted me like, dude, check this out, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have heard of it, and I am really glad I did. This is a good one.
Cool. Definitely. Hey, look on the screen. If you look on the screen right now, I did a review of the new Metal Church album, and if you'd like to check that out, that would be awesome. Click on the screen, and we all might talk to you later. All right, rock on, guys.